You have shared with me some impressionable times of when you were younger and what others have said to you that has really kind of impacted you in the long term. Can you share one of those times?
Yeah, so one I clearly remember. So I'm one of 5 boys, no sisters. I'm the youngest one. They're all still in Ireland. They all still live there. But they're all over 6 feet tall. I'm 5'8". So I was always like just a little bit different. And growing up the way I did and always questioning everything, I just stood out as different, you know. Like when the Jehovah's Witnesses would come to the door, I would take their books and my mother would like flip out because we were Catholic, you know. I even was reading the Catholic Bible one day and my mother whipped it out of my hand and said, no, you listen to the priest. Like, don't think for yourself. So because of that and what I was doing and the contemplating, even though I didn't know I was doing that, I was different than my brothers, you know. And so my mother obviously saw that. So she pulled me aside one day when I was really young and she put her arm around me and I'm sure in an effort to help me said, don't worry, someday you'll be as good as your brothers. So, because the words that I heard in my ear were like, you are not as good as your brothers. And I'm like, what? Like, what? Is that supposed to help me? No. So man, I carried that around with me for so long. Like I had this chip on my shoulder like I needed to prove something. Like I really needed to prove to people like that I am as good as my brothers, you know? And boy, did I do some stupid stuff trying to prove that. And the funny thing is that every single thing that I did in my life in an effort to prove that, every single one of them failed. They all just fell apart miserably and failed. Whether it was in relationship, in business, whatever, they just failed because I was trying to prove something. So the energy of it was all wrong. But, you know, then, you know, with the meditating process and the learning and becoming awake and stuff, and I looked back at this and I thought, oh, okay, this actually had nothing to do with me. This had everything to do with my mother. She's worried about me. She sees me as different, but she wants me to be like my brothers. So she's worried. And so to her, those are helpful words. I think, don't worry, it's okay. Like, you're going to be okay. But really what she was saying is, don't worry, I feel okay. I'm going to be all right. Like, you know, so it was really all about her. And when I recognized that, then that just changed for me. And I think that happens a lot of times with people. They hear things. I know one of my aunts told me one time when I was singing, she said to me, stop singing, you have a terrible voice. So why would I sing, right? Why would I even think about singing? Because you're a child and that's what you're hearing, right? So like, oh my God, I have a terrible singing voice. So we hear these things when we're younger, they have an effect on us and we believe them to be true. And they actually have nothing to do with us. They have everything to do with the people who said them. It's about their karma. It's about their stuff. And when we recognize that, we can separate ourselves from that anyway. Recognizing that the human stuff has nothing to do with us anyway. But in separating that, we realize that, you know, the words that we were told as kids that it might have affected us, right, were all about the person that said them. It was their stuff. And that happens throughout life, the people we meet, what they tell us and how they talk to us and how they are, you have to recognize it's their stuff. It's not our stuff. And while on the subject here, I remember teaching a class one time, and when I was teaching energy classes, right? And when people's energy start to open up, emotions come up, right? And so there was a woman in class and she started crying unconsolably because I knew something was coming up for her, which was wonderful, right? It's coming up, so she now handle it and move on. And someone else in the class made an effort to go over there to console her. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? She goes, I feel so bad for her. I'm like, do not take on other people's energy. It's not yours. You feeling bad, you can't be taking on this person's stuff. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with you. Like, stay out of it. So when people say to me, like, I'm an empath, I'm like, please stop. Why are you in it? Why are you taking on someone else's energy? It does not belong to you. But they think they're being brave or something by taking. No, you're just harming yourself. And it doesn't help them, by the way. You have to leave. This is the compassion, right? Understanding, but not interfering. Not trying to take it on. You shouldn't be taking on anybody else's energy. That's a wrong thing to do.
So as a parent, and you have a child crying, would you comfort them then?
Of course you comfort them,
Yes.
because they're a child. But a child is different than the adult, right? When you get to the adult years, you're on your own, right? It's time, to be an adult. When you're a child, you don't understand, you don't have the brain function to understand, how am I going to work through this? Children don't know that. So yes, the comforting is there, but not taking it on. You still don't take on your children's stuff. You help them, and you guide them, and you love them, and you support them, right? But you don't take on their stuff. You still have to separate it, because if you start to take it on, you're not helping them. You're just hurting yourself. But absolutely, console, guide, love, support, yes.
And having, you've been a parent, and you are still a parent, and gone to a longer journey than I have, in that, what's an important piece of wisdom that you would share with someone in addition to what you just shared?
Oh, I'll get in trouble for this one too.
Please.
So when you start to awaken, you start to realize that your kids don't belong to you. That's hard for parents to hear, because for some parents, the children are everything. It's their entire world, right? But that child does not belong to you. It came through you, but it doesn't belong to you. They're individuals, right? So for me, parenting was all about, how do I help you be who you want to be? That's it. Love, support, guide. I'm here for you when you need me. Even now in their adult years, what can I do to help you? What can I do to support you? Not, this is how I think you should be. That's me foisting my stuff on my kids. So I always looked at them and said, what do you, like, even as kids, like I think I told you that one day, my daughter said, hey, I think I want to play the violin. I'm like, oh, okay. So we got, a cheap violin for her to practice on, because you never know. Maybe there's a violinist there, right? So you get the violin, and 3 weeks later it's like, nah, not for me. I'm like, okay. But you have to let them have the experience of it, and not deny them experience of it, or force experience on them to say, I've heard interviews with parents who are not parents yet, or going to have parents, and they're like, oh, my child is going to take piano lessons. My child is going to do this. I'm like, you're already deciding for this child what it's going to do, what it's going to be, no, this is an individual. You have to let them grow into who they are in the experience of their human, and not foist on them anything else. Your job is to love, support, and guide, right? That's it. But they're not yours. They don't belong to you. Yeah. That's hard for a lot of parents to, a friend of mine, her son took his own life. And it was very hard for her, obviously. And I helped her a lot through that. And she came to me a lot. We talked a lot through that. And I had to explain that to her. And that was very difficult to explain to someone who has just had a child that took their own life, to say, that child doesn't belong to you, right? And but she got it. She was open to it and understood, and that helped her with letting go. Is that it doesn't belong to you anyway. You need to let that go, because once the physical form goes, you gotta let them go. I've experienced. We were talking about ghosts and spirits earlier, so someone I knew who, unfortunately, her son had taken his own life too, pretty young. She asked me to come to her house And so I went to her house. I walked in the door, and the son who had passed away, his being is still in the house. His energy is still in the house. I walked in the house, and I heard. So it's not a physical yelling, but I heard him say to me. He was telling me, "Get out." He told me to get out of the house. Get out, like get out. I could hear it clearly. Get out. He didn't want me in the house. He didn't want me in the house because he knew what I was there for. And what I was there for is tried to explain to her, you gotta let him go. But he wanted to attach to her, she wanted to attach to him. That's why he wanted me out of there. And that is something that's really hard for people to do, is you need to let that energy go. Because that energy will not move on from that place if you don't allow it to go and let it be. Because now you're holding the energy bonds and keeping that energy trapped when it should be gone. It's almost like, in the physical world, your child is saying, I'm going to college, and you're holding onto their hand going, no, you're not. No, you're not. I'm not letting you out the door. I'm not letting you out the door, right? You have to let that happen. You have to let, for them to grow, right? The same thing in the energy world. You have to let that go. It's not you. It's their own energy. You have to let it go.
In that situation where he also wanted to attach to her, what happens then if she...
That's the youth. He was very young. So he was still attached to her as a mother because he was very young. So he still had that attachment. Yeah. But she wasn't aware enough to recognize that she could help him move on and help that happen. But she just wasn't aware enough to know that.
Wow.